So, babies are born ready to learn language. We know that because they communicate with us right away, don't they? First through crying, then through eye contact and facial expressions, and then through babbling, and finally with real words. But what is it in a baby's brain that makes this all possible? How is it that humans are able to talk and not just make sounds and gestures? How did you, as an infant, begin all this? I'm Tara Tuck, and I help parents, preschool teachers, and all of you who care for young children to learn everything you need to know about speech and language, the most important part of child development. In this video, I'm going to tell you how babies and toddlers learn to understand and use speech and language, and what their little brains are actually doing, even from before birth. And at the end, I'll give you some great suggestions about how you can start your baby on the path to being a language expert. I'm a speech and language pathologist and the author of The Joy of Language, The Guide to Language and Learning for Parents and Caregivers. I've given you that link below, so please subscribe to my channel and visit my website. In the last video, I explained that language is made up of 5 different features. There are phonemes, which are the sounds of language, morphemes, how we change words for different meanings, like through prefixes and suffixes. There's syntax, which is the order of words in a sentence. Semantics, which is the meaning of words or vocabulary. And pragmatics, which is the appropriate use of language. So how do babies and toddlers learn to understand and use speech and language? And what makes them really want to do so? Well, it seems to be a combination of 3 things. The first is that babies are born with the ability to learn language, and that human brains want to learn to communicate with others. Now remember, I'm talking about human brains, not animal brains. We know that animals have their own languages, but they're not complex like human languages. They might use different tones or rhythm and even facial expressions and body language. And some animals, like dogs, can learn to understand our tone and body language, like, "Who's a good doggy?" And they can learn what certain sounds mean, like sit, or roll over, or up. Essentially, the brain is a pattern detecting device. Babies listen to the patterns of language, and their brains organize these patterns into rules of the language or languages they hear. It's an innate skill. Babies are born with it. Secondly, babies learn from their environment. They learn to speak the language that they hear around them. The parts of the baby's brain for language must be exercised by interacting with the language during the first critical years. It must develop and use these brain connections or lose them. And the more they hear language and can interact with the people who are speaking, the more they'll learn. That's why it's so important for you to be a great language role model. And also be a great observer of your child's language so you can make sure it's on target. And the third important way children learn language, actually the way they learn anything, is by being rewarded for using it. So if a baby says "da-da" and daddy smiles and picks up the baby and lifts him into the air, the baby will most likely say "da-da" again to get a similar reaction. If a child says something and gets nothing as a reward, as if no one's listening, he or she will probably not talk very much. Or if your toddler just points without using any words and they get what they want, then why should they talk very much? We learn to do what's going to be rewarding to us. So if talking is rewarding and fun, the child will practice more and he'll develop much better language skills. So let's look at this again. Babies' brains are ready at birth to start learning language, but they must hear language and be able to practice the skill with others. And babies and toddlers must find language fun and rewarding in order to keep practicing and using it. Now, I hope you're wondering how a young child's brain is able to learn language seemingly so easily. Well, a child's brain is quite different from an adult's brain. A child's brain is continually growing and developing, and it has about twice as many connections or synapses as an adult brain. As a matter of fact, during the first year of life, the number of connections double in order to be ready for this rapid creation of knowledge. In fact, a 3-year-old's brain contains about 1,000 trillion connections. This creates an incredibly complex network that's largely formed by experience. Another thing you should know about the brains of babies and toddlers, the part of speech and language that's most fascinating to them is what we call prosody. Prosody is the sing-songy quality of language. When we say, "Oh my goodness, look at that big smile," the baby probably doesn't understand the words you're saying, but they watch your face and they listen to your tone of voice. You know how we talk to babies? "Oh my, I think we need to change a diaper, don't we?" We use an exaggerated tone, exaggerated prosody. And since it seems that the right hemisphere of the brain, which processes rhythm and melody, develops a little earlier than the left hemisphere, which processes things like rules for making sentences, babies and toddlers really tune into this part of language. You'll even hear it when baby begins to babble. They babble with the prosody of sentences, like this baby talking about the story he's listening to.
So I don't want the house to maybe but a word or the house is the high do.
They also watch facial expressions very carefully. These facial expressions also activate parts of the brain that we use to interpret movement that we call body language. So without really interesting prosody and facial expressions and body language, our talking would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? If I use no intonation or facial expressions in this video, you would certainly have turned it off by now, wouldn't you? So let's think about some of the things you can do to make sure your baby's brain is taking in all it can to prepare for talking. And we'll see how this all relates to what I've just talked about. Use good eye contact and put your face close to baby so he can see your expressions. This keeps your baby really interested. Happy expressions are rewarding for baby, and the baby's learning how to use movement for expression. Match your expression to hers to draw her interest to facial expressions and body language. She'll automatically use different expressions and gestures, and imitating her will draw attention to your connection with her. Sing songs to your baby, especially songs with repetition, like Old MacDonald Had a Farm. She'll tune right into the prosody and the tone and the rhythm, and babies love repetition because they know what's coming and they can eventually imitate it. Show pleasure and enthusiasm when your baby is cooing and looking at you. She'll naturally start cooing because she was born to do this, and it's so rewarding to your baby to see you happy. Pause long enough for your baby to babble a response to you, as if you're having a conversation with him. This is teaching him the give and take of communication, and he's being rewarded by your attention. You're giving your baby you. And read stories to your baby right from birth, and watch her attend to your face while she's on your lap, and eventually to the pictures you point to in the book. Remember that language needs to be in her environment, and it's never too early to start pairing spoken language with written language to show your baby how much fun reading is. So I hope you'll keep all these ideas in mind, and your child will grow up with the real joy of language. Now, please write to me in the comments below, ask me questions, give me suggestions. Also, please subscribe to my channel and visit my website, thejoyoflanguage.com. And tell your friends, relatives, preschool teachers, babysitters about my book that explains it all, and of course about my videos. And I'll see you in the next one.